Hey, this is Kamari, and today we're going to be making Liliana's bodice. Now we're doing another Disney pattern. In this case, we're using the Simplicity 1026, which is for the live-action Cinderella dress pattern. And we're using the pattern pieces for Cinderella's bodice. So that's view A. And before filming, I wasn't sure how this pattern was going to fit on me, so I made two mock-ups just by following the basic pattern directions out of some scrap fabric to see which one fit better. And because this is a pattern where instead of lacing up the back, which a lot of the fitted bodices I've made in the past do, this one actually zips up the back, so there's not a lot of wiggle room in terms of lacing. So I just wanted to make sure that it fit. So if you're unsure about the pattern sizing, that is one thing you can do before you get started. So now we're going to go on to making the actual bodice for Liliana. Next, I cut out all of the bodice pattern pieces, and then I cut them out of the purple cotton. And this is going to be for the lining of the bodice. So now that all the pieces are cut out, we're going to zigzag around the edges to keep them from fraying. After the pieces have been zigzagged, attach them all together according to the instructions included with the pattern. So a couple places are going to not be sewn all the way to the end, and this is so that the sleeves can be added on later. And we're just going to follow the directions included in the pattern for that. So there's going to be a couple notches at the top, but we're not going to worry about that too much until later on. Repeat the same process with the shanting fabric to create the front of the bodice. Next, we're going to put right sides together, and we're going to sew the bodice pieces together along the edges of the arms, the center of the bodice, and all the way along the bottom, leaving the armholes open. Then top stitch around the edges of the bodice to keep everything in place. Now you can insert your zipper into the back of your bodice. Now I found that a bodice, when the zipper is completely open, it is wide enough to slip over my head with a little bit of wiggling, so I did not put a separating zipper in the back of it, but that most likely comes down to personal preference for this project. Now we're going to make Liliana's sleeves. I found that the sleeve pattern that was included with the rest of the bodice pattern was a little too high on the shoulders for my liking, because Liliana's the top of her bodice is very low, and this, at least on me, came up a little bit too much over the shoulder, so I just trimmed that part of the pattern off to create a shape I was a bit more happy with. Of this new sleeve pattern, for each sleeve we're going to cut two pieces out of the purple and then one piece of interfacing, and we're going to zigzag around all the edges before we start assembly. Next, we're going to put right sides together and sew the sleeve pieces together along the bottom and along the top. Now, the pattern directions mention using elastic at the top of the sleeve, but because we cut off that curved portion and we're not going to be gathering it, I am not going to be putting any elastic in the sleeve. Then turn the sleeve right side out and put the two ends together, and we're going to sew them along the edge. Then top stitch along the top and bottom of the sleeve to keep everything in place. We're not going to worry about the sides of the sleeve for right now. Then I attached the sleeve onto the bodice. To create the pattern for the drape across the top of the bodice, I just pinned some tissue paper onto the bodice top over the sleeves, and then just kept trimming and taping more of the tissue paper on until I got a shape I was satisfied with. Next, I used the paper pattern to cut out the pieces for the drape across the front of the bodice. So we're going to cut two out of the purple and one out of interfacing, and on one of the purple pieces we are going to attach the interfacing, and then zigzag around all of the edges. Now we're going to put right sides together and sew the two sash, I guess we'll call it a sash for lack of a better word, pieces together along the bottom and along the sides, leaving the top open. Turn the sash piece right side out and top stitch all around the edges to keep everything in place. I then hand sewed some white lace onto the sash piece, and I also added some beads onto it just for a little bit more decoration. And lastly, sew the sash piece onto the bodice. Now, I hand sewed it on, but you can machine stitch it if you would like. And in the artwork, the center of her bodice is kind of gathered. I didn't really like how it looked, so I'm just leaving it like this for now, but that's up to personal preference. So with that, Liliana's bodice is done. For more sewing tutorials, please subscribe, and thank you very much for watching. Bye.